Joni.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, yes. I'm always excited to have Joan Watson on every Thursday. And she is an author and a speaker and just an all around outstanding, wonderful Catholic Christian woman. And even though we do not get to talk much outside of just this Thursday chat, I would like to consider her a friend. Joni, how you doing today?
I am doing great. Yes, doing great, and we can definitely consider each other friends, even if we only talk on Thursday morning.
Right. I feel like we're just chatting and letting the rest of the world hear what we're talking about. But, Joni, this is exciting. Tell the audience where you are, what you're getting ready for. This is good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm actually in Indianapolis, Indiana this morning, walking outside of a little coffee shop where I'm working, and getting ready for NCYC, the National Catholic Youth Conference, that is this weekend in Indianapolis. So really excited for this. It's a big thing this year.
Oh, so my question is, do you is this teenagers? Is this like high school kids?
Yes, so it's funny because in the church, the word youth can mean a lot of different things. And so when we look at like World Youth Day is actually in Europe, youth kind of means young adults. And so World Youth Day really is aimed at like 18 to 35-year-olds. So only in the church I think it's a 35-year-old a youth, right? But with NCYC, it's an American gathering. And so yes, it is youth meaning high schoolers. So it's mostly freshmen to seniors in high school. But it's neat because like so many Catholic conferences, you know, so many people are there with like group leaders, exhibitors. I'm going as an exhibitor. And so it's also just a big fun Catholic reunion, right? Because you're going to see a lot of people. But it's the audience is teenagers and high school kids. Yeah.
So, and I think I was to one like back in the early 80s. It was in Milwaukee. I was a pastoral associate in charge of doing some youth stuff, and I think I took a group from there. So, it was quite, the energy was quite high. So tell me, what are you expecting at this conference? What kind of things are the highlights?
So the big highlight this year is that Friday morning, Pope Leo is doing a special digital appearance, a special address, and it's huge. Nothing like this has ever happened where, the Holy Father is addressing the youth of America. And the background is really cool because they approached Pope Leo about recording a message, which, I mean, the Pope does that a lot, right? The Pope is, asked to record a message, and he records a little address, and, he does that all the time. So that was the original request. NCYC, or the National Catholic Youth Federation, through the nuncio and their Episcopal advisor, Archbishop Perez of Philadelphia, asked the Pope to talk to the youth and give a, pre-recorded address. And Pope Leo came back and said, actually, I would love to have a conversation with the youth. And so instead of a 10-minute recorded address, he is actually live streaming a conversation for 45 minutes on Friday morning, talking to the youth of America live, thanks to technology. And so everybody is really, really excited.
Oh, that is exciting. So do you know what his initial message, like the topic, before he opens it to questions?
So they're going to kind of weave it into the topic of the conference. So originally the topic of the conference was the sacraments. And so they said, you don't want to pigeonhole the Pope into a certain topic, but that was already set. So I think what they're going to do is kind of introduce this idea that, like, confirmation isn't graduation, right? Confirmation isn't the end of our formation. And so what do you do now after you've received the sacrament of confirmation? So I think they're going to kind of weave it in that way. But they've actually asked about 30 young youth, 30 high schoolers, to come up with questions that they're going to talk to the Pope about, like real questions, not like, I think the example was not his Wordle starting word, although I would love to know his Wordle starting word. But not like, questions that are just surface level, but real questions that these high schoolers have for the Pope. And so they're going to ask him questions, and there's going to be a real attempt at actual dialogue. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't know, how that's going to happen. But there are teenagers who have been chosen to actually ask the Pope questions so that they can have this dialogue between the American youth and the Holy Father.
I think that speaks, so well of him that he is willing to take 45 minutes and actually have a
Yeah.
dialogue, just not slap a 10-minute video together and send it to him,
Right.
right? That's kind of what you expect because you know how busy he is. And so, boy, and let's talk a little bit, Joni, in the time remaining about your insights into where the youth are today with the faith and how can we as church continue to nurture that?
Yeah, so I think we're just at a really exciting time in the church where there's so many resources at our fingertips that, like even when I was growing up, there's so much that wasn't readily available. And so we were reliant on textbooks and we were reliant on, so much to be fed. Whereas now, like with the internet, with like all the digital media that we have, so I think part of it is just like a responsibility, especially on our role as adults, to make sure that those resources are used, but also that they're good and they're orthodox and they're loving, they're beautiful. So I think we have such an ability for answers. And I think that's one thing we have to help them see answers to their questions, because we're dealing with a generation that has a lot of questions, they aren't flippant questions. They aren't just questions of like, how do I, back in the day, apologetics was like, how do we explain purgatory and the virgin birth and like things like that.
Right.
These youth are asking questions about the Catholic Church about like, why is there evil and why am I here and should I be here and who am I and am I loved? Like really deep questions that I think we have to help them see that there are answers and there are real answers and there are hard answers, but there are beautiful answers. And so I think first and foremost, we just have to accompany. And I know that has like this buzzword, like people talk about accompaniment and what does that mean? Yeah. But I think we have to love our youth and help them realize there are answers to their questions. And so if there are youth in your life, if there are youth, whether it's a grandchild or a child or a neighbor, first and foremost, help them know that they're loved and that there are answers to the questions they're asking and that the church has answers. It's not just like an authoritative place that like tells you what to do, but that the church loves you and has answers to your questions. And I think that goes a long way. But I think there's so much hope right now with the youth because they're hungry and they're realizing that the world doesn't satisfy. And that's huge. That's a huge first step. It is.
And I was just saying earlier in the show to someone else, I just had one of my students on Tuesday say, do you think that Christianity tries to make things too like not Christianity itself, but the way we are as church today, and not just Catholic Church, but church, all denominations? Do you think we're just making all of this too easy? And I thought that was really a great insight from a young man who just wants to be challenged in the faith, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I saw with John Paul II, right? John Paul II was my pope when I was a teenager. And why the youth loved JP2 and flocked to JP2 was that he challenged us. I had a friend comment at his funeral, because we were at his funeral, and a friend commented, JP2 knew what we were capable of and expected it. And I've never forgotten that line, because I think that's what we need to do. We like young people want to be called to something higher. And in a world that hands out drugs or condoms or easy answers or, surgeries for our questions, I think the youth actually really want to be challenged because we know what they're capable of and we need to expect it. We need to help them. We need to walk with them. We need to love them, but we need to call them to something higher because that's what everybody actually wants. And so I think Leo really is going to follow in that same footsteps of JP2. He knows what the youth are capable of, and he'll expect it. And the youth will respond to that. Yeah,
and I think you're right on the money, Joni. And it's about, when we say expecting more, it's really about helping them grow into who God created them to be, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, have fun at the conference, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Thanks for being with us, Joni.
Sounds good. Thanks, all. Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.